is intellectually engaging.
Court does not sit to waste its time. If you have no defense, it chases you.
It is a ruling on the foundations. Business has been conducted in a certain way.
Banks take money from us, depositors. All of us seated here have got money in the bank. And even before you walk out, they've given that money to somebody else.
Deeply incisive.
The law enjoins us to be answerable to the sovereign of the country.
Our members of the force, we have always been demanding officers to be highly disciplined and being accountable to people of Uganda.
Authentically symbolic and insightful.
We should work so hard to evacuate this power.
Behind the Headlines, every Wednesday at 10 p.m. with Charles Odongto.
Very welcome.
Probably the most experienced talk show moderator in Uganda, with a team of illustrious panelists. Honorable Margaret Mohanga, a veteran journalist, legislator, entrepreneur and development consultant, and Ramadan Gobi, an economist and university don.
I've really got perturbed that in Uganda we are building parties with no membership subscription.
All on your public broadcaster, UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Good evening and welcome to this edition of UBC Behind the Headlines. It's edition 30 and it's indeed me, myself and I, Tony Kent Kyazze, your host for the day. Today we are going to be looking at the state of security in Uganda, and I'm joined by a wonderful blend of guests whom I think should be getting into the introductory bit just about now. Well, let's start it off with Honorable Margaret Mohanga, MP-elect Fort Portal North, and, well, currently MP Burasha County, Kabarole District. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you and good evening, viewers.
Honorable, you don't seem to be happy. Are you happy?
I am happy.
Oh.
I am ever happy. Have you ever seen me angry?
Well, I think you're scared that there is someone on the show this time who might actually arrest you.
Who?
Well, you'll be finding out.
There's nobody who will arrest me for today at least.
We also have Mr. Robert Chirenga, the ED National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Eddie. It's nice to be here.
Well, thank you. And of course, to the extreme left, that is my extreme left, is Honorable Peter Ogwang, the State Minister for ICT and National Guidance, and MP Usuk County, Katakwi District. You're welcome to the show, Honorable.
Thank you so much. It has been long when I was last here. Thank you. Good evening, viewers and listeners.
Interesting. Well, for you that is following us this particular show, you can get down to social media. We are streaming live via YouTube. That is UBC Television Uganda on YouTube. Then on Twitter, follow us on our handle at UBC TV Uganda. The thread, the hashtag is hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. Ramadan Gobi will be joining us a little later. He will be coming via Zoom. So just in case, let's keep waiting till that appropriate time when we shall have him coming through. Now, my dear guests, today we managed to have an interaction with the Security Minister, General Eli Tumwine, and it was quite an interaction. He made a bit of highlights concerning the speech that was delivered to the nation by His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, the President of the Republic of Uganda, and also highlighted a bit of, shed a bit of light on the aspect of the drones, the arrests, and the allegations of torture. My producer is probably going to be taking us to that, and thereafter we shall be kicking it off from that particular stage.
And thank you for always, you said this is episode 30, but you've been highlighting on security many times, and the good reason you gave is it is security which keeps the nation stable. I think that's a very important start. And the record of our country, which has a long history of having hard time when there was insecurity, real insecurity in this country, and what brought security and stability and peace in this country. So it is important as a subject, and before you do anything you want to do in this world, whether business, whether politics, whether farming, the most important thing you need is peace and security. Now, the record of the national resistance movement revolution, right from the onset, was to ensure peace and security of this country. And a lot of sacrifice, a lot of effort, a lot of guidance, especially from our tested, proven leader, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, to guide and to teach and to train pro-people security forces has been a very deliberate and conscious, ideologically laid effort. And that's why all the time the president comes out to explain, all the time the security forces, in spite of whatever negativity that negative forces put against us, we take it easy and we explain and we do our work and ensure security which people are enjoying. Now, these allegations of people disappearing, which the president said should be dispelled, and he went, that's why he came out. And he said there is nothing to hide. We are transparent, and we have always been transparent. Under the national resistance movement, the government, this question of anybody disappearing or being killed without is not something to talk about, and it's what we are committed to. And he showed people, yes, were arrested for the following reasons, different reasons, which he explained and which are known to the public. People who are threatening to kill others, people who are threatening to destroy buildings, people who are threatening to destroy property, people who did destroy those properties, threatened people, even fought with security and wanted to kill them. And this is not something new. So the explanation on the reasons for arrest was he did, and security has been explaining that yes, a number of people were arrested. But every day there are actually suspects being arrested for different crimes and suspicions in which they are engaged in. And if there is anybody on the list, we have many big lists. Over every day there are people being arrested and charged in court. Some are sentenced, others are acquitted, others are pending investigations. Now, if there is anybody who says, my person got lost, my person disappeared, go to the nearest police station, report. What we have now, we keep getting, these lists are given in our daily reports of the security agencies. So they will check through the names of those who could have been arrested in the different areas, because some are arrested in the city here, some are arrested in the different districts, and there is no way you can have one center which has all the lists. But everybody has a nearest police station to report to, a nearest security officer, the DSOs, the GSOs, who can continue, who help the public. We say help the police to help you. Now, the challenge which is there is whom do we trust? Do we trust the campaign of the anti-government campaigners and forces, the negative forces who are propagating, are exaggerating, and causing people fear and worry, or we trust the proven, tested providers of stability and security who have been helping this country? Whom do we trust? That is the good question. Do you trust the president? Do you trust the security forces who have been with you here providing security? Do you believe, whom do you believe is the question, because it's a matter of choice. However, the unfortunate media, which I think most of it is unprofessional, because before you publish anything in relation to security, you are supposed first to cross-check with the security, which they are not doing. Somebody makes a statement, then it is blasted across the social media, and the journalists and all the media people spread to the public, and the public multiplies it. When it comes to cases like the question of drones without numbers, we've only been seeing 1 or 2 vehicles being said on TV. There could be just even 2 or 3. And we don't know why whoever used them did not put numbers. We are investigating why did anybody have to use a vehicle without a number. And some of the information was saying that the owners whom they were hiring it from did not want to be victimized. But that one we are investigating. And we are telling people, if there was anybody within the security forces who went out of the line of the orders that were given, will be investigated, and we have always disciplined our forces. That's what brought the character of our security forces, because we take more tough measures against our own people to ensure that we keep the discipline, we keep the doctrine of keeping a good relationship with the public. So the only point which I think you should make here, don't the president explain, dispel this whole idea. There is nothing to cover up. If anybody was arrested, we shall tell you, as I have told you, those who are arrested with red tops, they are violating the UPDF Act, will be tried in the court-martial, and they were more than 100. Those who are arrested by the police for different crimes, murder, threatening, violence, all sorts. I can read to you: attempted murder, aggravated robbery, organized riots and demonstrations. All those were arrested with legally established crimes, and which are triable. And a number have been taken to court and tried. For example, on the election day, just as an example, there were 557 offenses which were committed on that day. And out of those, actually, and then about almost 600 people were arrested, the whole country. And 261 of those suspects were charged in court. 19 suspects were convicted. 210 suspects were remanded. And 32 suspects were released on bail. I'm just giving that as an example of one day of the steps that are taken and the reports that we get. So these lists, these names, these numbers are known, they are not secrets. And each one comes with what charge against him and where he has been charged or taken. If it was in the relation to the berets and being in possession of materials, otherwise a monopoly of UPDF, they are tried in the general court-martial. And they are tried in public. You always see it on TV. They are not a secret. Those who are arrested by police, they are taken to courts. And it is public. It's not a secret. So really, to end that subject, I appeal that the more the same message being repeated 100 times, instead of calling arrests, they call them abductions. And instead of saying people are suspected, because they were as the elections were coming along, open intention to commit crime was stated publicly. Open statement says we shall fight police were made by the anti-government forces. So suspicion was not only suspicion, there was even outright clear crime plans and programs and preparations. So for which not disappearances but arrests were made. Arrests were made, and the government is not shy about it to arrest criminals or suspects. Then on the question of, I have told you about the drones. The drones, there are now many drone vehicles around the city, driven by civilians, driven by, with those of government have their government numbers. And if that was one or two, it should not be as if there was this rampage across the country where drones, as if they are flying in the air, were arresting people. And therefore, and if there were people impersonating, they will be found out. And it is not, impersonation actually has not started now. They, even before, people pretend that they are officers and they are arrested by our own forces. So all these points being raised. Now the question of torture. Even that one has been media manipulated. There is a case which was being shown on social media of a lady who had a motorcycle accident and then was being depicted as having been tortured. There was a case of Segawa. Segawa case was very interesting one. He was with his friend were phone thieves who were arrested by the public and mob. And one of actually his colleagues was eventually died before the police came. When the public called the police, they are the ones who rescued Segawa. And Segawa is has never been a member of NUP. He was a FDC supporter. But the FDC went and got him from Murago and took him to NUP, and claimed him, and then started mobilizing money from the diaspora that their supporter had been tortured or beaten. Just to give you examples and spread in the media. Now, these are the sorts of things we are saying, please, whom do you believe? Do you believe security? Do you believe the tested old freedom fighters? Do you believe the people who have kept this country stable and growing and economically progressing, where everyone has the freedom? Or are we turning the freedom into chaos? And the intention, the motive, what is the motive? There are two things. There is negative and positive. Every night there are people, actually during the day there are people who see darkness at night, who are involved in evil thinking during the day, and they don't even see the light. When the light, by nature's design, like the sun, is meant for at night to you to be resting, but there are those even who turn during the day night and they look at the negativity. I have chosen to forgive them because negativity comes back to you and it kills you more, but positivity brings you more light. So instead of resting for them, they plan what during the day, even what they should do, and during the night, and lose the light of the day. And I can assure you that when you see what is deliberately and consistently, we now know the negative forces and the names of those whose line all the time are looking at the negative side. Now, if you don't forgive them and let them see light later, because for us we have hope. Why do we tolerate? If you want to know somebody who is very tolerant, very patient, is our president. because he, like all of us and who follow him, you don't look for the negative in the person. The biggest room in the world is room for improvement. We have hope that these people, and that's why we are saying this, we are going to explain and stand against that negativity and explain and show the public the positive side of Uganda, because you know some people have compared the incomparables. Even comparing the NRM regime like that of Idi Amin, I think anybody who says like that doesn't know what was happening during Amin's time. He doesn't understand, because he will not say that. He will not have the freedom to say it and go and sleep over the night. He will not even be alive. We are remembering General Lumumba's death yesterday, and many others. So the question of who is, I saw today something in the New Vision which made me, I really can't believe. It's a joke. I call it a joke because I can't leave it to go. Where they are asking that court removes a judge because he's a blood relation of General Tumwine, who is accused and to the local and international community. And if that, imagine that was to be a scenario. First of all, they have a problem of having to prove. Let me put on record. First of all, I don't have a judge who is my blood relation. Secondly, they will have a problem of having to prove the DNA to that court. It means that if anybody is related to you whom you don't like or whom you hate, he can't serve government or public anywhere when all of them have relations, all of them have friends. It made me laugh. It's a joke I can't ignore. But I have just said ignore, forgive them, because you see that some people are taking life from the always negative point of view without real seriously thinking about it. So I really like to advise on this program that let UBC, let the media, those who are working very hard for regime change, now that is finished, let's come back to look at the positive side of things. Let us discuss, let us inquire. If there is any question, there is nothing to hide, it is open. And if you are talking of lists, we have them, we shall show. If you have anybody missing, report to the police. And trust the security forces. They are the ones keeping us safe and secure. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. Don't support campaigns and attacks on security without justification. And it is propagated by the open free media. And my appeal here is to the media. You are supposed professionally that before you publish anything on security, cross-check with security. It is in the law, in the electronic media law, even in the press law, section 55. Even if you are not obliged to give your source, but if you are taken to court, you will give it where you got your source. So some of these things which are being done are sometimes being done without proper seriousness, without proper thinking. But we have never tired. You see, the good thing is you are dealing with people who know what they are doing, and that's why I sang you my song, Abogera Bogere, Uganda Agenda Mass, Uganda Songa Mberi. Talk what you talk, but Uganda is moving forward. Why? Because it is on the same, it is on always the ideology and the principle of transforming our society for the better. The biggest room in the world is room for improvement. There are no angels everywhere. We have some mistakes. And here, that's why I'm saying I ask for you, I forgive everybody. Because we have hope that somebody will improve, somebody will repent from their sins, and we have many who have done that and whom we are working with and who are our leaders, who are our good people. So let's stop the negativity, let's emphasize the positive side, and work for the better future of Uganda together. And we welcome questions, we welcome inquiry, we welcome together, so that we help each other rather than fight unnecessary wars, which are these days are in the media, because we provided media freedom. Freedom of speech can be abused. Too much, you know, there is history also. Too much freedom destroyed Rome. So democracy in Uganda is at its best. From the presidential, Uganda is the only country in the world where all leaders are elected by other suffrage, almost, from president to LC1. And I think I'm told that it is only the NRM party which is having the primaries on universal suffrage and then repeating the national elections. So really, too much democracy is good, because we, in our first point program, is real democracy. But there are mistakes there also, because nothing is perfect. But where there are mistakes, let's revive the values. Let's revive what proved, what worked for Uganda. Let's revive those values of telling the truth, because Banyankole say that the lie wakes up very early, but the truth reaches the destination before. Now, so much lies are being told in the media, and it is our duty to keep telling the truth, and the people will choose whom to believe and who not to believe. So I wish that on this line, these programs we hold are not necessarily to propagate negativity. They should have more positive side, looking at the bright side of life. Of course, it's negative is necessary. There is no positive without negative. You know why we call our movement, our revolution, NRM? National law is for national unity. Resistance is for knowing that there will always be negative forces which need to be resisted. And without resistance in science, there is no movement. It is when you defeat this resistance that you move forward. And that has been our history. Challenges come, resistances come, we deal with them one after another, and we move forward. So, that's why I always tell you, we are always prepared with whatever comes. When I sing for you our song, Adui akija sisi tuko tayari, you laugh at me. But we prepared for these elections. In spite of all the bad intentions, public and private. The elections were smooth and peaceful, in spite of all the abuses to the security and intimidating the public. Peace has been maintained, and has not only been maintained only now, for the last 35 years. So really, the hope, my new resolution of my, if you study the history of the president, his level of commitment, his proven performance, his resilience, his patience, his tolerance, his willingness to work with anybody who has anything useful to give. And you see how it has built the strength that Uganda has. And then you see the opportunities Uganda has, as opposed to the weaknesses, which are mainly negative campaign now. That is the big threat to Uganda, negative campaign. But otherwise, Uganda is being transformed. The strength, the opportunities of Uganda are much greater than the weaknesses and the threats. So let those who want to talk to continue talking, those who are in the business of talking only, Uganda in a song and belly. That is my message, and I wish you a good program.
Thank you so much, General Eli Tumwine, the Security Minister of Uganda. Quite a message it was, and quite a bit of dissection and addition to the earlier on given message by His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni over the weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what you make of that particular message, but I'm going to split 5 minutes for each one of us to share with me what you pick out of the message and perhaps what you feel is major in as far as the message that the minister has shared with us. But I'm going to go first to Honorable Ogwang, and before I actually give you the floor for that particular dissection, I'm wondering, are you still on VPN?
First of all, I would like to begin by thanking Honorable Eli Tumwine and of course my colleague Honorable Muhanga and all the viewers. I am here, like you did invite me to talk about security, but I want to put this on record. The matter of security was ably addressed by His Excellency the President. Secondly, the Honorable Minister in charge of security has also given a very good address, both to us and to those who have not listened to his speech. I want to say this. First and foremost, Uganda is peaceful. The country called Uganda is peaceful, right from Kisoro to Oraba, right from Maraba to Vura, right from maybe let's talk about Kalangala to Katakwe. The country is peaceful. So when we are discussing issues of security, in my opinion and in my wisdom, these are the outcomes of what happened during the elections. I also want to put this clearly to the people of Uganda today, that the elections went on peacefully. Where I come from and other parts of the country, we had a very successful, peaceful elections. And I want to commend the people of Uganda for turning up in such numbers to elect both the presidential or the president and members of parliament. And I want to commend the security forces of this country. They did secure the country to have a peaceful elections despite threats and plans which had been given by the opposition. That's why I want really to thank them so much for what they did during the time of election. Now, where is the problem? Like we did all know, the president did address the country and he did highlight where areas of insecurity, some parts of this country specifically. I want to address myself here in Kampala, parts of Wakiso, parts of Mukono, Masaka, and maybe other areas within the Uganda or central Uganda here. These are the areas where the security has been carrying out some operation. And I also want to appreciate again the president. He did ask the security agents, please release the list of the people who must have been, who are arrested. And I want to say this, want to call upon our people to follow the advice and the address of the president. For those whose persons are missing or whose relatives are missing, they need to go like the Minister of Security has right said, please report. But what brings this also? Because we must also understand, you all remember what happened during the time of elections. Remember what was happening in Kampala here? You putting on a t-shirt of a party, of a political party of your choice, was so becoming a crime. What would happen? For women, with due respect, they would be arrested, they would be beaten, they would be undressed. Why would we go this far? Because before that, where was the problem? Our city was peaceful, the rest of the country, parts of Uganda here were peaceful. So for me, I want to put myself and say this, that the question of security, and I want to call upon Ugandans, any leader, any political actor who attempts to call upon the people to cause insecurity, to cause disability, or try to disable our country must be shunned. Because we all know the history of our country. I speaking here, I know some of us were born in camps because of insecurity. Some of us went through the hands of LRA. No one would ever wish to say Uganda of before come back today. And for our young children, our youth, anybody attempting to mobilize you to join any activity which really tries to take our country back, let's think twice. And I want to call upon the security agents, please, it's my humble appeal that let's work with us elected leaders to see how to address the challenges of a few elements who are trying to destabilize our peace and our country. But I also want to repeat again that Uganda is peaceful, and let's begin to know elections are over. Fortunately, all elective positions have been done. Electoral Commission roadmap, in my opinion, as per what was planned, has gotten concluded. So for now, all of us, like I can say this, I'm back to full at work, and I'm in now my office. UBC is my office, is part of the ministry. The other thing, of course, which I want to touch, which is related to security again, is a question of today, what happened today. Of course, as a minister in the sector, I really want to regret the incidents, what happened today to a few of our colleagues, particularly journalists. I want to say this, that we shall work with the security agencies to see how to apprehend the persons who did harm the journalists when they were carrying out their day-to-day work. And that I want really to regret for the actions which took place today as a minister who is in the sector of information. It is true, we know and we expect journalists to be given access. But also I want to call upon our journalists, it's important that you identify yourself by using maybe the apron so that you can be able to work with security. But also call upon our journalists, like the minister said, whenever you're with these security officers, I know there are moments when they might say this place is an area where you're not meant to reach. So let's try to abide by. That's what I can say. I really want to say I regret the actions of what happened today. I thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Peter Ogwang. He's the State Minister for ICT and National Guidance. We shall definitely be getting back to him, but as per the plan that we have laid, let's perhaps turn to Honorable Margaret Muhanga. We want to have a bit of a balance of the gender, and since it's just one female on the show, we'll see how best to utilize her this particular evening. Honorable Muhanga, the state of security in the country. His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni gave us a very wonderful speech over the weekend. A bit of a comprehension of it has come our way from the minister explaining the nitty-gritties of it, and I wonder what you made of it.
First of all, for me, I am extremely impressed at Eli Tumwine and the way he spoke today. Some time back, I think it was around December, he was, I think, annoyed after the riots. He was pissed by what took place. He was spitting venom, fire. He was very angry at the way the media was reporting about those riots, and also the conduct of the public. He had been stressed up by the whole event of November, and I actually remember he told him, please tone down. Today he's really calm, he's composed, he's meek, and he's speaking from his heart. He has given us the whole chronology of the NRM, or the NRA for that matter, how they came to power and what they are known for. Indeed, this government is known for not many things. Even children in the village, if you ask them, do you support NRM, and they say yes, they will say we support NRM because it brought peace and prosperity. Just two things. They will not say anything aside of those. Now, when the same security is breached, like the press has been reporting, which I don't think, the many exaggerations that he has talked about are real. Uganda is a hub of peace. Everybody knows that. And that's why we have been able to grow our tourism sector, because Uganda is stable. That's why we have a lot of investments, because Uganda is stable. Now, why Uganda is getting destabilized, I won't call it political greed. Everybody wants to get to power sincerely. And for me to get to power, I've got to look for the negatives or the failures of the government in power in order for me to thrive. And so in this quest, people have taken this matter very far. Last night I was watching some TV station. A very highly placed member of the public, but in the opposition, alluded to the fact that the rioters that brought chaos in Kampala nearly brought down business in most of the cities in central region, towns in central region, were operatives of government. Sincerely, you all watched. There were so many people on the streets rioting everywhere. Does the security organs have all those numbers that were on streets? But somebody shamelessly, because they want to get to power, says all those were operatives. I watched it and I started texting some friends of mine in security, asking why they let these things go lying low. Because you won't do that in any of these East African countries and go back home and sleep, and the next day you go to your office and work. You are supposed to go and answer, because such statements are the one that incite the public, bring toxic politics, excite people, and annoy them and anger them. This growing anger towards government is not because of what it has done or has not done. It is because of us political actors that have hyped up so much, have brought up so much toxic politics into the public, and because some people thrive on it and depend on it, so they want it to remain as the status quo, especially in the areas where they come from. Indeed, I am also glad that this election ended well. It was peaceful weeks before or months towards the election and after. And everybody has gone back to work. But you can see people have still continued inciting the public. Throwing in some works so that people don't settle. They start thinking about politics. We need to think deeply, because the president was clear. He said there are some groups, foreign groups, that are supporting these politicians. If a foreign group comes to support you, because I don't think they are countries, they are just groups, and he was very clear on that. And we know the groups. Some of you know the groups. A lot of them have been trending on social media, writing notes and even speaking out loud, especially the LGBT community. Now, in that event, that somebody is getting foreign money to come and fight his own country, this prosperity of their own country, should that person really be followed? Ugandans need to first think before they act, because sometimes we just move by the wind. But this wind, you know, the wind that blows very fast leaves very fast. The wind that blew here in Central Region and some parts of Vosoga, the same wind the same wave will leave very fast. And in these 5 years, we shall all be back here talking about that wind and the people it came with, and they will have left the stage with the same wind. Matters of security, especially for this country, which is known to be an island of security, good security. Our neighbors have never seen good security. If you want to know that security is paramount, go to Congo, open a business. Or go to South Sudan, just near here. Open up a business and work and see if you will successfully run that business. Or go to do anything. Things are tight in some places. People have not tasted peace for a very long time. And most of the destabilization is not coming from within. Most of it is foreign aided. And so, I want to call upon Ugandans. No one, whether you are in government or opposition, will be safe when this country is put in flames. No one. If you think your family will be safe because once occasionally you will flow them out of the country, you will not do that all the time. If this country is set up in flames, everybody, wherever you are, you will be touched. Nobody will be able to take everybody out of the country, because it's not only your children that are your most important people. You have parents, you have cousins, you have brothers and sisters. You won't carry everybody.
So at the end of it all, it's a responsibility.
At the end of it all, we need to be very responsible. And these opposition politicians who appear on these TV stations, they really need to have some responsibility to their own nation. Otherwise, if you come and incite people against the government, you do not know what you are doing. I am glad the security forces have taken care of our peace during this time. And also the public, I want to commend the public. They have also behaved, because somehow there could have been a breach of security somewhere. And then that would be the end. We wouldn't be talking like this. It would be a different story altogether. But now, the last point I want to raise is about our togetherness as Ugandans. We have just finished an election. Why should anybody be boxing the other over politics, really, at this time? We know there is still a court case. Thank you. Everybody is following keenly, but let's wait for the courts to decide. I've seen people commenting on the court cases all over social media, wherever. What authority do you have to comment on a court case? Why don't you let the justices do their work and you also do yours? If somebody is doubting all the judges, another one says only two, really, what authority do you have to start now judging these
let's get back to that probably a little later in as far as the aspect of the authority. Let me turn to Mr. Chirenga Robert, the Executive Director of the National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders. And in your case, I'm going to probably direct you in a particular angle. You probably stand for the defending of human rights. And perhaps from the angle the minister shared, he did say the crimes have been legally established. It's nothing like what we've had on the streets of social media and other entities, that probably people are taken in without any crime, they are taken in without any warrant and things of the sort. And I'm wondering, majorly, the people in human rights will tell you that these things that are happening probably are not the right things to do. People have their rights, A, B, C, D. And there's always that, that pointing out of the 48 hours ultimatum before people can be presented into, courts of law and the likes. I don't know. What's your take on that? Of course, basing on the speech, or rather the communication from the Minister of Security.
Thank you very much, Eddie. I think I need also to be given an opportunity to comment on what the
Definitely you will. You are actually. You have it.
So there's no doubt about the fact that security is very key and peace is very key. And you can't do anything where there's insecurity, which is very good. As to whether the country is peaceful or not is debatable.
Debatable?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because peace is not the mere absence of conflict or war. Do you get it? When Honorable Gwang says when they were in the IBDPs, in the internally displaced camps during the insurgency that took over 21 years, some sections of this country, I think the country was peaceful. Were you peaceful when you were in the IDP camps? When LRA was committing atrocities there? No, but some section of this country. So what I'm trying to emphasize that every life matters, whether it's one or two. So you can't tell a citizen whose son or daughter has been arrested or kidnapped that he or she is enjoying peace. No, it can't be. Me and you, who are in privileged positions, can say we're enjoying peace, we're peaceful. No, but that's being economical with the truth. Not everybody is enjoying the peace, because you are in a privileged position as a minister, as a state actor. But don't think everybody is. But 20 or 30 years ago when you're in the IDPs, I don't think that's the same language you're using.
What have you done about it?
That's what I'm coming to.
Okay.
We speak out as human rights defenders. Where there is an injustice, we shall speak out. Unfortunately, the Honorable Minister interprets speaking out about injustices and also recognizing the good things that government has done. Because you have to give a balanced scorecard. Now, when we talk about the injustice, that's what he calls negative forces. And he forgets that Article 38 of the Constitution clearly stipulates that every citizen has the right to participate in the governance affairs of his or her country through either their elected representatives who are seated next to me, left and right, or through their civic organizations. So when civic organizations come out to speak about the injustices and also acknowledge what government has been able to do or not to do, then that's negative forces. We need to differentiate this. 2, the Constitution under Article 20 imposes an obligation on each one of us, whether state agencies or organs of government, to protect and promote human rights. It's an obligation, and it's mandatory, because the language is shall uphold human rights.
What is a human right?
Human rights are those entitlements which are inherent by virtue of being a human being. They are not granted by the state. Government does not give you your rights. No. It is supposed to guarantee you your rights. So human rights are inherent. The moment you are born, you inherit these rights. Now, he talked about the crimes, the people who have been arrested, that these are legally established crimes.
Yes.
Fine, well and good. And if most of these arrests were legally established crimes, as he said, and he defends that there is nothing like abduction, what does due process require you to do when you are going to effect an arrest? 1, that you inform the person you're arresting of why you're arresting him, what is the crime he's committed. 2, you even caution the person that any word you use or talk here as a time of arrest may be used against you in the courts of law. 3, you present the person in the courts, and you must allow him access to 1, the next of kin, 2, to his or her lawyers. I want to challenge the Honorable Minister whether these steps were followed when they are effecting those arrests. That's what we call the rule of law.
When we had a side chat with the minister before he got onto camera, he said that the process of reporting, for example, like what you're saying here before the camera, is supposed to be in writing, and then of course when you write to the authorities or the powers that be, they respond to you in the most appropriate way. Have you done that kind of appropriation?
Reports is an understatement. We've done that beyond. What we do, the problem in this country, like any other developing country, that the reading culture, you read something, it's the same story, the narrative is the same. There is nothing that we haven't reported about. The issue is to divert us by calling those human rights defenders as foreign agents, by calling them enemies of the state. Yet the very Constitution clearly stipulates that citizens have the right to participate in it. Now, if there is an injustice, and I report about it, you as the state who thinks that, no, what you're reporting is wrong, you should be able to give the contrary position and say, what you're reporting is not correct, these are the facts. But you don't see it. All you see is being name called. You're being called foreign agents, you're being called all these kind of mercenaries, enemies of the country, which I find very unfair and contradicting. Because if the whole supreme law tells you that citizens have a right to participate, to influence government policy. So whether he talks about security, whether the president, there's nothing that should stop a citizen from commenting about that and say, we think the alternative would be better, because that's a constitutional obligation. And we continue to do that as human rights defender. Mark, you should know the definition of a human rights defender is those individuals who, in association with others, protect and promote human rights using non-violent means. So when you talk about insecurity, human rights defenders understand it, because that defines the work they do. Any human rights defender, purported human rights you find on the road trying to block roads or using hate language or trying to burn tires or destroying public property is not a human rights defender at all. Does not qualify in that definition.
Well, it looks like Honorable Peter Ogwang is burning with a bit of response or perhaps reaction. Honorable, the floor is yours.
First of all, I'd like to thank the human rights defender here. First, I want to remind him that the NRM and the leadership of Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, 1995, of course, you all know, the constitution we're operating today was entirely under the able leadership of Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. So the question of being defenders of human rights, the track record of NRM government in defending the rights of the people is very clear. That I want to put it on record. Because we seem to begin discussing as if the government of Yoweri Kaguta Museveni has not been protecting the lives and the rights of the people. Now, why do I say this? I am also answering in a manner which was saying that, which I want to remind my brother here that, and I want to repeat, that Uganda today, from one border point to another, is peaceful. When I was in the camp, I don't think any minister could come and say Uganda from one border point to another was peaceful. No. And I want also to quote this. When I was in the camp, I remember even then, I was a young boy. When the government came up with a plan of trying to disarm the Karamojongs, the human rights defenders were saying, no, government is going to break people's rights. Government is going to do this and this. But we, whose rights were affected, I don't think there was any human rights group which came and defended us at that critical time.
Honorable.
As of today,
yes,
I want to put this on record, that please, let me quote a case of that police officer who was on duty, who was hammered using a hammer. I never heard of any human rights defender protect that police officer.
No.
I never. He's here.
No one.
I never. When they were busy making these women who are putting on a NRM yellow t-shirts and dressing themselves to walk, I never heard.
Are you suggesting human rights defenders
I'm coming to that point.
Government?
I'm coming to that point.
Okay.
I want to address myself specifically on the question of us having a two-faced value.
Yes.
Where you can only be able to talk about some areas where you feel you have a direct interest and you ignore the other. Are you being sincere and real?
No.
No. And that's why I want to ask them that when we are talking about defending of human rights, can we be able to be open and genuine to ourselves? That's why I would be very, very happy if they had come out. Unfortunately, they didn't. So I want to put this clearly. As government, first of all, we do acknowledge this rule of law. As government, whenever some casualties, some cases have been committed, which are entirely of human rights nature, abuse of human rights, some of those perpetrators are there. That's why you have Uganda Human Rights Commission. What does it do? It's an institution. It's an institution of government.
Yeah, but it's dysfunction.
So are you getting me? So the question of us saying it's like the state doesn't really care about the rights of the people. I want to say this, my brother.
I think when Mr. Chirenga spoke, he was highlighting the fact that it is impossible for a whole nation to have peace at a go. There is always those parts where people are not happy, where they are not peaceful, and others are having peace.
Maybe let me clarify something here. But I can make one or two comments here and clarify also on that. For instance, what is happening here in Central is entirely a political battle where some individuals have not accepted the results of the just concluded elections. That's why you see they went ahead and attempted to mobilize young people. Number one, cause confusion. Number two, confront police and security agencies for purposes of using it as cases to justify Uganda as having there's a failed state in Uganda. Like there's already a narrative which is there. Like now, when my brother here says that we in government are calling them mercenaries, I want to say this, that is very unfortunate. But then, if you are a mercenary, then you must check on yourself. If
no, it is your principal who called us. Let me clear something.
No, let the minister get done, so we can get back to this side. Yes, minister.
So, I want to say this, that what we request of them Please, this is our country. We're number one. Number two, we want a peaceful country. Number three, we want a country where there is rule of law. For coexistence, for us all to operate and do and work together. Number four, what we request of them as actors of human rights, work with the state, like you've been working with, so that we all give the information you require for parts of us move forward. What we cannot accept, and I want to say this, we are a sovereign state, for God's sake. And I want to appeal that if we are a sovereign state, can we work within the confines of the law of our country? Because like my sister said, there are a lot of actors who seems to be having interest in our country. A few, not all by the way, because our country has been enjoying cordial relationship with most of the actors all over the world. But specifically for this case, what interest do they have? These are the issues which we want to ask the so-called human rights defenders. That despite you working to defend the rights, which it is okay, which we want to say, that's a good job done. Because we want to say, they have a role to play in one way or the other in terms of helping check the excesses which might be committed. They have a role to play. But can they be fair, balanced in whatever things they do?
Fair and balanced is what the minister asks of you. But let's turn to Honorable Muhanga first. You are a legislator just like Honorable Peter Ogwang is. But this time I'm actually putting it to you in an aspect of the law that you represent, and majorly the people you represent in Parliament. In as far as the human rights and the aspect of what Mr. Chirenga has been trying to push through, the legislations in Parliament, do they have particular pointers towards human rights and preservation of human rights?
We have always said human rights, your rights and my rights are not supposed to be trampled upon by anybody.
Yes.
What actually the minister was raising is that the human rights activists here, or organizations here, side with one group. I actually was a journalist for 9 years, if you remember.
Yes.
For 9 years, I worked with a New Vision. I saw today how journalists were harassed. I felt so bad that our security forces can degenerate to such chaos. Beating up journalists, really. Why beat a journalist? You are just killing a messenger, but the message will still go. You won't finish everybody. Sometimes they also act out of impulse, out of emotions, out of anger, and even end up persecuting the wrong people, especially the journalists. Nonetheless, I want to agree with Honorable Gwang that these human rights defenders, even if you are getting foreign money, you need to be balanced. I have not seen even one person on any talk show or anywhere condemning a man who was hitting a policewoman with a hammer. I could not even stand watching that clip. The moment he raises his hammer, I close my eyes. I don't know how anybody can watch such a clip. A little policewoman, and a man is holding her and hitting her with a hammer. I hope she still has bones. I looked at this guy. You are hitting this policewoman. She has other colleagues who are even armed. Who do you think you are? The same human rights defenders who were here with Charity the other week, last week actually, they don't even make mention of the rioters. It's like it was okay. They had the right. They can bring the stones and block roads.
It is a right for
they can beat people, spoil their cars, undress women. It's all right. The security should not touch them. You people, you human rights defenders. Why don't you see in any fight there are always two sides? It takes two to tango.
Yeah.
I can't fight alone. I will not find you in your home and shoot you. For instance, me, I don't know anyone who has been arrested. How come I don't know anybody? Ogwang, do you know anybody who has been arrested in this spate of insecurity in the
Not even in the neighborhood?
No. Do you know anyone?
No.
In my whole constituency, I've never heard about anyone who was picked by security.
In my neighborhood, some youth were arrested for causing chaos.
In your neighborhood?
Yes, during the youth elections.
Where do you live?
in Bukoto.
Well, you were in Central Region. I don't know anyone elsewhere who has been arrested. And these riots only took place around here. Why? Why haven't you ever asked yourself? And no one makes that analysis.
It's a cash cow.
Why didn't people
Black spot.
riot in Gulu, in Teso, in Kamuli, or in Fort Potro, or in Kavale? Why? Why didn't they riot on that day of November 18th? So because it takes two to tango, you who have entangled yourselves into this fight, you know, when we are fighting, you cannot tell me that, you know, Margaret, and now that we are fighting, please don't hurt me here. I will hit wherever. You get the point? And so these people were defending themselves. Policemen were being beaten. People were being undressed. Did you see the women who were undressed? So it was okay for those guys to walk home after undressing women.
No, probably that one he will have, that particular one.
So when they come and arrest them, they start complaining. They run to these human rights defenders instead of asking, where exactly were you picked from and for what? No, people must be released unconditionally. Released unconditionally, my foot. Why? Why don't you first ask them, why were you arrested? He will tell you, you know, I was in my house, I was just picked. The clips are there to show where you were at that time. So you want to tell me that all those people who were burning tires on the streets, all those people who drove their cars and actually delivered the tires, should not be arrested?
Actually,
they should drive back home, have peace. It is okay for them to block roads. I saw somebody's cars being hit, some people's cars being hit completely to nothing, and people were jumping out of their cars and running for dear life. And the stones were following. Sincerely speaking, anybody who saw that riot, start with a riot, then go to the shootings. Blame the police. Blame all the security agents for having used extreme force, let me say extreme force, in which our 52 citizens died. It was too much. Somebody came driving his car and they started beating him, and in the wake of running away from people who were hitting him,
actually,
he drove over a person.
Yes.
I really felt so bad. I felt so bad. I just said, first of all, he didn't intend to drive over these people. He did not.
He was in
shock. He was also running. He was in shock that here is a roadblock, let alone these roadblocks that you saw here. There were roadblocks on highways where they were asking for money. Somebody mounts a roadblock, some group of young boys, and whoever passed had to give them money. Who were they? To take the country by storm. Who? And when they pick them, people come on TV and start crying, my husband was taken. Your husband was taken from where? How come they didn't take mine? How come it is yours?
Yours was wise.
Exactly, yours was in the riot. Because there were so many people who were in that lawlessness. So, and picking them is so complicated. You know, you have to go back to the cameras and start spotting one by one.
CCTV.
There were actually the CCTV footage. There were so many people who were involved and very few were arrested. Because I think they were overwhelmed. The people were too many involved in these things. First blame the person who comes and blocks a national road, lights up tires, makes a fire, and stops everybody from participating. I want to end with this.
Yes.
There is a lady, I worked with her in the New Vision. She was a member of the East African Legislative Assembly. Sheila Kawamara Mishambi.
Yes, I know.
She was here in UBC studios, telling a story of how she reached a polling station and wanted to vote. And the woman said, they will not give you a ballot to vote because they know where you will put your vote. Because of the name Kawamara Mishambi? Really? Here in Kampala, in Bukoto, in Naria.
Wow.
So people who behave like that, what do you want the government to do with them?
Let's
take them for a massage, take them for honeymoon?
For steam bath. Honorable Muhanga, let's turn to Mr. Karenga. We want to understand, are human rights, you know, prone to police and maybe the army and perhaps only for the non-security persons?
No.
Yes, you said they are for everyone, but from the look of things.
Eddie, thank you. With due respect to the Honorable Minister and Honorable Muhanga, you know, at times it's not good to expose your ignorance in such a forum. If you don't read...
Wait, I beg that you do a bit, get to respect the guests a little.
Yes. But ignorance is not an abuse. You may not know, because they've never had, they are on record, they say they've never had us come
lack of information.
Okay, lack of information. I'll use that. So if I really gave me time and I went to my website and pulled out the most recent press statement, it clearly condemns the use of violence. It condemns those people who attacked those whom they did not believe with. In fact, we even condemn the police for deploying such a vulnerable policewoman in a place like Chiseka. You see, Eddie, we need to understand this. Let me educate them. What are the obligations of the state in terms of human rights? One,
when they put the
they have to respect the rights of citizens. Respect means that you shall not infringe on the rights, you shall not interfere with the enjoyment of the rights of the citizen. Two, that you shall protect citizens. What does it mean? That the state has an obligation to protect any citizen from any third party. A third party would be that person who is not a state actor. In others, a private citizen who comes to assault another or to undress a woman. That's the obligation. Core. Third is to fulfill that they create an enabling environment for people to enjoy their fundamental rights. Now, where a state fails in its primary duties and human rights defenders speak out, it is not enough to say that these are foreign agents. Focus on what you're supposed to do. I want to respond to Honorable Wang's submission with regard to NRM's history.
Which Honorable? We have two Honorables.
Honorable, the Minister.
Okay.
It is no doubt that the NRM played a very big role up to today in terms of promoting human rights here.
Okay.
That the Constitution is a baby of the NRM. But the very Constitution they put in place is what. So where the curve was rising in terms of protection and promotion of human rights, it is now curving or sloping down.
In your view, what could be the cause, if at all we went by your kind of allegation?
Failure to accept their wrongs. Let me give you a practical example. He talked about the Human Rights Commission. That's a national human rights institution. Do you consider it functional or dysfunctional today, in the absence of a chair for the last 1 year? Do you know what the law states when it says that there shall be a chairperson of a commission? It means in the absence of a chairperson of a commission, it's a dysfunction. Any decision it makes now can be challenged in the courts of law because it's not fully constituted. Two, this commission has very wide powers, and those powers cannot be used right now because it's not fully constituted. So how do you explain that from the time this institution was established, they had chairpersons, it was functional, it was recognized well, but today it is dead. It's really literally dysfunction. The best it can do is to promote human rights by creating awareness. Those are the issues we are raising. Now when we raise these issues, we are playing our work as human rights defenders. To say that we do not condemn or we condone issues like violence is to be very economical with the truth.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Chirenga Robert. He's the ED, National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders. When we do return from the break I'm about to call, I will actually start off with Honorable Peter Ogwang, and I'm hoping you'll get yourself ready. We want to find out from you, perhaps the constitution of the Human Rights Commission having a bit of a pending position somewhere, somehow. Is it reason for the human rights realization that is seemingly failing to some extent? We take a break for now. It's UBC Behind the Headlines.
Hello, how are you? Tell me, how do you do? We're here to show some appreciation for the things you do. Sent you for today, and they sent you for tomorrow. Sent you for every time and everywhere you go. We love you so, and we enjoy life with you. We are happy, happy, happy to know that we will go with you. That's why we say, sent you, sent you, sent you, yeah. Sent you, sent you, sent you.
Thank you for choosing MTN. Use MTN Mobile Money, bundles or other services to get Thank You points. The more you use, the more Thank You points you get. We look forward to many more years together. Thank you.
Today tastes like a new tradition, like an old favorite. Tastes like all hands on deck and all eyes on the prize. Today tastes like a piece of the action, and it never tasted this good.
Your safety while using electricity starts with having a certified technician to wire your premises. Do not use Camille
sockets. Chisaka, now that the wiring is complete, how do I get power?
No, I'll get you power in my own way. And you don't even have to worry about the bills. I'll bring them myself. Is your neighbor there?
She went to work.
Does she have power?
Yes, she has.
If your neighbor has the power, you have the power.
Desist from illegal connections because they are not only dangerous, but could lead to prosecution and death.
Chisaka, what is this? Oh my God, I'm from Umeme.
I did not say Umeme. I am from Umeme.
At Umeme, your safety is our top priority. Report illegal practices to Umeme when you detect them. Download the Umeme app for other services. Stay alert, stay safe, save lives. Umeme, powering Uganda.
UBC Behind the Headlines, it is the 30th edition, and of course Tony Kent Kyazze, your host this particular day. We are looking at the state of security in Uganda, and for those of you that are following us on social media, get a hold of us on Twitter at UBC TV Uganda, and of course as well, if you wish to follow the live stream, it's happening on YouTube, that is UBC Television Uganda on YouTube. The hashtag is UBC Behind the Headlines. So just in case you use that for your kind of following on social media, you can be sure you will be getting a hold of this that is happening now, and as well what will be happening as we continue. When we left off, there was a bit of a queue to bring on Minister Peter Ogwang in as far as finding out whether the constitution of the Uganda Human Rights Commission has an effect on how the Human Rights Commission is operating. Honorable Minister.
First of all, before I answer that, I want first to try to remove one word from my senior brother here, who is a human rights defender. There is a word which he put in, I put it in quotes, a vulnerable police officer. First of all, we do not have that in our country. And I want us to respect the people who make us, number one, secure when they are protecting us and when they are helping this country. All policemen and women of this country, all soldiers, both men and women of this country are not vulnerable. So I want that to be corrected, and such words should not be used in this podium, because that's not really acceptable in our standards. I want to really put that clearly.
Maybe perhaps it was contextual.
The reason why I'm saying
Once someone has done it,
even if it is contextual,
is as good as any other.
This is a person serving our country as a police officer or a policewoman and a policeman of this country. So I want that to be made on record that there is no vulnerable police person. Because why was he bringing that example? That why would the government take such a vulnerable policewoman to work? She's on duty, for God's sake. We all know, world over, anyone who is on uniform and is on duty cannot be attacked. Duties of a citizen under Article 17 are very clear of the Constitution. So I want this to be made clear to our people here. Number two, the question of Uganda Human Rights Commission. It is true that there are a few gaps in Uganda Human Rights Commission. That's a fact. I don't want to say that it's not true, it's a fact. So number two, I know the chief executive will address these matters. But that does not mean that the office doesn't exist. By the mere fact that it is a constitutional office, it recognizes, it means that this government recognizes the fundamental rights of people which are enshrined within our Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. So I want to say this. Matters of security, I want to repeat, like my sister said, we do acknowledge that there were issues and people have complained. We do acknowledge, the president did make clear when in his address that if there's anyone, number one, whose son, daughter has disappeared, he did ask security to put the list of those people who had been arrested. Number two, our brother did say, why didn't we give them services of lawyers? Are we clearly there? Because it's also an issue of the right of human rights. Why did we deny them? First of all, access to their lawyers, access to their relatives. Number three, it is also today's a constitutional provision which says that you must be produced in court within 48 hours. That's the fact. We know that all these are embedded within our laws of the Republic of Uganda. However, I want to put this on record. Like my sister Margaret said, first of all, the circumstances under which Muhanga was picked and not Ogwang leaves a lot to be desired. Number two, we have now a CCTV cameras, both within here and the rest of the country. Most of the people, whom of course we expect the security, part of the means of security and the security agencies to come out and tell the country that Ogwang's crime was this, Muhanga's crime was this. Why do I say this? It helps build confidence of the population. Because before it was all over, government has started killing people. So for me, I want to say this, and I want to conclude by saying that as far as matters of security are concerned in our country, the chief executive, who is the president, is the master and the champion of security. Number two, the Minister of Security has explained to us. So for me, I only want to call upon we, the political actors, and particularly human rights defenders. I want to repeat again that let's be balanced whenever we're giving the views as far as issues of human rights are concerned. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. As we get to Mr. Chiranga, there's a message here coming in from Beth, who is watching
Tony.
us.
Yes, Tony.
And Beth says, the culture of defiance is too much in Uganda just because people have been given too much rights. Continues to say, human rights activists play double standards always. They love to blame government for its actions, but never the rioters. Security forces by law are on official duties because they are legally deployed. But rioters, on the other hand, conduct illegal acts by doing what they do on the road. Also, the law allows security forces to the right to self-defense, but does not give the same to rioters. Also, when security forces give orders to citizens to not go to places XYZ, the public is supposed to oblige and not to defy. I wish to ask you, Mr. Chirenga,
yes,
in as far as aspects of the female officer that was captured on video being battered by someone with a hammer, if police came to arrest the person with the hammer, was police still expected to do the whole bit of narrative, the citation of...
No, you save life first. You save life first, but you can see the circumstances now.
Oh, circumstance counts.
Yes. You save the life of that policewoman and take this person. You can see, you've found him in the act. That's different from when I find you, Tony, in your house, and I pick you and take you to unknown, ungazetted places without telling you, without making the next of kin know that we've taken Tony because we suspect he was responsible for throwing stones or doing this or causing, was a rioter. And you can tell his lawyer that we're taking him to Mbuya or we are taking him to Chireka or Jinja Road. They can always find him. That's
what if they did?
You get it? You get what I'm saying? But the act, maybe you also we need to understand when I say that the lady, the policewoman was vulnerable. You know Chiseka, that even some of us seated here cannot even go to Chiseka to go and buy a spare car.
Why?
Eh? Why? Simply because
the rioters have taken over Kampala.
Ah, very good. Now, when you say the rioters have taken, whose duty is it to ensure?
No, actually not the rioters, the lawlessness people.
Now, back to that comment. Yes and no. The author...
From Beth.
From Beth. Beth has a point, but where I don't agree with her is that she's mixing human rights defenders with rioters. We've never promoted violence. I gave you the definition of a human rights defender as defined under international law, under the Declaration of the Rights and Responsibilities of Human Rights Defenders, that a human rights defender is that individual who, in association with others, protects and promotes human rights in a non-violent manner. So the test here is the means. If you're using violence, you seize. Nobody can claim to be a human rights. Now, whether or not we condemn the rioters, really, I have given you sources. If you went on our press statements, you will find that we really condemn and we acknowledge where government has done its work. Are we together? We do acknowledge that.
Is it true to say that the human rights defenders have not come out in as far as aspects where probably people that represent the state have been attacked? You've not come out to speak about it?
Not at all.
We do. And that's what I was telling you, it could be lack of effort. Just as many people say, government is doing a lot, but it's only that they don't communicate. You understand? Some people do not bother to find out what exactly do human rights defenders say. They only look at, just like the Honorable Minister is talking, we could also call them negative forces towards the work we do. Because they look at the negative, they don't see the positive. You get it? But a human rights defender can never condone violence. It's out of it. I mean, it doesn't fit in well. Now, to imagine that a human rights defender is receiving money to undermine the security and democracy of his own country and come to a national public broadcaster here and talk, don't you see it defeats the purpose? So what am I urging? That we go for instability. How do I go back home if there's instability? We are saying, yes, there is a legal regime and a robust legal regime. The Constitution. This country has ratified the most number of human rights instruments, the most on this continent. Our Constitution is considered progressive, but we are saying, we can't stop telling you what is going wrong when it comes to the realization of these rights. And that's what we say. But some people are uncomfortable. And you know, we speak truth to power. Some people do not want to be told that certain things are going wrong. But why are we there as human rights defenders? Why do you think the framers of our Constitution, the framers of this Constitution provided for Article 38 that every citizen has the right to participate in the governance of affairs? So when we see something going wrong, we must be able to report. When we see something positive, we must be able to say we acknowledge and appreciate government efforts in this. Now, that bit is what they have deliberately ignored and focused on what we are identifying as the ills in terms of governance and the rule of law in this country is concerned. And we need to have an open discussion, an honest discussion on whether this country's trajectory on governance is rising or the curve is going down.
Wow, quite interesting. Honorable Muhanga, there is a message coming in from one Eric here on social media, and Eric says, Honorable Muhanga doesn't know what ordinary Ugandans are going through. That's why to her, all this talk of brutality doesn't exist.
So if something has happened to you, or if maybe you don't have food at home because what he's going through, I don't know what he's going through anyway, does that allow you to go and block a road? Does that give you authority to stop others from wearing shirts that they would like to wear?
No.
Because if I'm having a personal problem, I shouldn't transfer it to another innocent person. Because a lot of people, that word we've heard it for so many times. Do you know what Ugandans are going through? I also am going through so many things. Does he know them? He doesn't know. So everybody is going through their own challenges, quietly following the law. If you are going hungry, it is not this government that is making you hungry. Probably you are sleeping the whole day, the whole night. Probably you don't have a job, but that doesn't mean you go and riot. That is not the way to get a job. Even the person you may want to bring to government may never get you a job. So it is your skills, it is your knowledge, it is your intellect, it is the way you are brought up that will make you act the way you do. So many of us didn't get jobs immediately we left schools. We took some time, but in that time we did not go on the streets to start undressing people and rioting just because I don't have a job. No, we did not. So it doesn't matter where you are or what you are doing. And but you must act according to the law. You cannot wake up one day and set Kampala up in flames. And so you expect security to thank you so very much because you are going through a lot of trouble. Thank you for burning Uganda House. How? It has nothing to do with what you are going through. Everybody has got challenges. At any one point in time, everybody has got challenges.
These days,
that they deal with.
The talk of town is struggle.
Yeah, struggle. Everywhere you read on social media, you know what Ugandans are going through. Who is not going through it? Am I living on Mars? I am also here in Uganda, going through the same challenges, perhaps even more than yours, because I have more people that look up to me for assistance.
And more
you
money.
have not anybody.
Anyway, the saying goes, more money, more problems.
Exactly. Not money, not that we have money. We don't have even the money. We are struggling. Struggling so much. Yes, we are. Because you don't know my challenges. You may find I have debts everywhere in this town. Only that if tomorrow I am arrested, that's when you will know that she has been struggling.
I was actually hoping Honorable Gwang would arrest you for being a VPNist during the time of internet lockdown.
I was on it throughout. I need a refund.
Anyway, let's just take a listen at this particular communication. There is a message that has come in from the Uganda Parliamentary Press Association, signed by Moses Mulondo, the Uganda Parliamentary Press Association president. I'll read it in bits just so we can get to the real part where I want us to get. It says the Uganda Parliamentary Press Association strongly condemns the continued acts of brutality against journalists on duty by security forces, which is in violation of press freedom guaranteed in Article 29 of the Uganda Constitution. It also says here, several journalists who had today gone to cover the National Unity Platform, President, as he delivered his petition to the UN Human Rights at Kololo, have been severely beaten by the military police and many left bleeding with big wounds. Mentions the affected journalists and highlights that in the past, there have been so many other nasty incidents of police and military officers assaulting journalists with impunity. Calls upon the Parliament, led by the Speaker of Parliament, and the Executive, led by the President, to undertake necessary interventions to end brutality by security forces against journalists and other citizens. That is Moses Mulondo, Uganda Parliamentary Press Association President. Now, in the same regard, we did see a message that has done a lot of trending on social media, that is off Twitter, on Brigadier General Flavia Viekwaso's Twitter handle. And the message was, UPDF regrets that some journalists were injured as security carried out its duties. We maintain and will always respect our relationship with the media fraternity. UPDF further advises journalists on duty to always wear easily identifiable press jackets. Probably, Honorable Ogwang, this is in your docket. The media is actually your brainchild, I would say, in the aspect of the docket that you take. And I'm wondering, you did make mention of the same, that media should identify themselves when they get into a particular place. But perhaps someone might ask, is that the way security operates? Or perhaps if everyone was identifying well as a media personality, what befell them wouldn't have? Then too, I'm also wondering, do you feel media has actually steered this kind of anxiety and excitement amongst the public? Are we doing our role as media? Or perhaps we've actually played the black card?
First of all, I would like to answer one question, one issue which was raised by my brother next to me here. The Ugandan trajectory is going downwards in terms of, is it human rights?
Yes, and the rule of law.
And the rule of law, I want to say no.
Narrative formed by the press.
Depending on who is saying so. Why do I say this? First, I want to begin by commending the leadership of His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. Number one, for upholding the rule of law. Number two, respecting our constitution. Number three, like General Tumwine said earlier on, it is only in this country where you get every office is democratically elected. I think even now being a sweeper is almost becoming that for you to become a sweeper, you must go through an election. This is in Uganda, which I don't think is happening in any parts of the world. So I want to say this. The question of our trajectory going down is not true. We are actually going upwards. Why am I saying this? Please, fellow countrymen and women who are viewing us this evening. Our election did take place. In central Uganda, we did not win as NRM. And I want those who are older than me to remember, the history I learned, there are moments in this country then when people, you could win an election and they declare Honorable Margaret Muhanga. But today, I won an election in each and every polling station in my constituency, and I was declared. So I want to really say, how do we measure the rule of law? So these are the areas which are debatable, which I want to say, I will need to be invited to come here again and discuss about this another day. Now going back to the journalists. First of all, I want again to repeat, as a minister of the sector, I regret the incidences which happened today. Number two, I call upon both the president of Uganda Parliamentary Press Association, we have the Uganda Media Council, which is based in my ministry. We'll work with security to see how to help security, to make sure that security follows up with those perpetrators who did beat up journalists today when they were going with their day-to-day work. That one I really want to say, as a minister, I regret whatever incident which happened today. And it is only in Uganda where we can say that. Other parts of the world, that happens and nobody, no minister comes to say, I regret what happened. What does it mean? We respect the rule of law. We respect the rights of each and every citizen. And we account to whatever happens to every citizen in our country. That's why I really want to say, and I want to also thank the spokesperson of Uganda People's Defense Forces for coming out to put up a tweet, which of course, like you've correctly said, it has gone viral. But also let's be realistic to ourselves. The record of the institution called Uganda People's Defense Forces is very clear. Some of 1 or 2 incidences when they happen, but they always take actions against the perpetrators of such individuals. So let's not go and say it is a norm of Uganda Police Defense Force. No, it isn't at all. Let's not say it is a norm of Uganda Police Force. No, it isn't at all. What is important is if Ogwang has committed a crime, has committed a mistake, is punished. Well, that is it. So that we still make sure that the respect of the institution still remains as it is. So for me, I want to say this, and I want to say this, that please, fellow journalists who are out there, who are busy viewing us this evening, on your behalf, we regret the actions what happened this today. I thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Honorable Minister. Mr. Chirenga.
Yes, please.
You seem not to agree with Honorable Ogwang, but I also want to ask you, how best should journalists operate without necessarily compromising the actions and operations of security? That is to say, without placing themselves in harm's way.
Tony, thank you. Maybe in the footstep of the Honorable Minister, allow me also to thank His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Uganda, for creating an enabling environment for human rights defenders to do their work. However, Your Excellency, there are challenges that you need to address in terms of command responsibility of the forces dealing with security in this country. That they should be able to observe the rule of law, if that will satisfy my colleague on the left. Now, because this every opening remark he had to thank His Excellency. Your Excellency, I equally thank you very much for creating that enabling environment. Now, to answer your question, journalists, we've always told them, they are human rights defenders by nature of their work. That one, take your personal safety and security serious. No story is worth your life. That baton that was used to hit them, if it was hit you on your head, you could get internal bleeding and collapse. And the story would never know the story. You get it? But for me, I would like to condemn, and that's why I want His Excellency to look into the command responsibility. Who was in charge of that operation? How do you deploy military police to deal with civilians? Military police is supposed to be dealing with military, not civilians. Two, why couldn't they tell them, give them marching orders, as opposed to hitting them?
Were you down at the Human Rights Office?
No, I was watching the script. It was covered live.
So there was nothing like
Only police tried to stop them as they were still negotiating, trying to identify themselves as journalists. The military police came and they saw what happened. But to answer your question, journalists need to take their personal safety and security very key. As human rights defenders, we've tried to train them that you need to do a risk assessment. And that's where I also find the journalists at blame. That when you are going to cover a story such, where you are following political actors like NUP, you ought to have done what we call a security assessment. What is likely to happen? What are the likely risks? Because you can never avoid risk. You can only mitigate it. And then position yourself where you think you are going to be safe and cover your story and retire. But what I saw there was something that I would not take. So someone who takes personal safety and security to have paraded himself or herself before these people, you need to have taken a distance away from them. And we can't say that the UPDF has always been acted like this. We've had meetings with the Chief of Defense Forces, and we know that in the UPDF there are real progressive forces there.
Wow, thank you so very much, Mr. Chirenga. I'm going to turn to Honorable Muhanga. You've been silent, but of course as our resident panelist, there is always that big question that you fire, or probably big questions that you fire. It's a blessing to have two gents on the show in a bit of a different kind of status, one being Honorable Peter Ogwang, the State Minister ICT, and as well Mr. Chirenga Robert, the ED National Coalition Human Rights Defenders. Please feel free to fire them if you feel like firing, or perhaps as well water them. It could be any of the two, fire or water.
Oh, water is better.
Water. I'm sure water is going to Mr. Chirenga.
I've been listening attentively to these gentlemen, and it seems they know each other the way they were closely interacting and giving each other challenges. I would like to ask a question, one question for each, or maybe two for Honorable Gwang, to ask a question to my immediate neighbor here, that in the event that there is an incident in Uganda where the citizens take up arms against the armed forces, like we saw in November, what response, or maybe a citizen disarmed a policeman and then shot the policeman and then maybe caused mayhem with the same gun, what would you human rights defenders say about these citizens? And what reports would you make to whoever you report to about such incidences who are citizens and now the ones taking up arms, because now policemen have been told don't touch the other one, don't do the other, you see you are using extra force. I don't know what level of force they could use in those circumstances. And then to Honorable Gwang, I want to ask you how much you interact with the media fraternity because when they spoke about Molondo, who is now the chairperson of the Parliamentary Press Association, in 1999, I was the vice chairperson of the Uganda Parliamentary Press Association because I was working at Parliament. There's a time when we disagreed with Parliament, or not really Parliament as in, but Parliament as an institution, and the vice chairperson, as the vice chairperson of the Parliamentary Press Association, I withdrew all journalists from Parliament. That time there weren't so many media houses like they are today. But I withdrew all of them, we all quit, and we never reported about anything about Parliament. They had a blackout for a whole week. Whether it was UTV that time, everybody left at the same time. So what plans do you have to have casual interactions with these members of the media fraternity? They are quite a number, but at least for major powerhouses that you know, what plans do you have to interact with them and the Media Council in order for them to know how far they should go in matters of conflict, and also how to conduct themselves in those circumstances where security is really heightened and there's a lot of tension among the public? I thank you all for coming to this show.
All right, thank you so much. We shall actually start off with Mr. Chirenga, and as well there's this that you might want to respond to, just in summary as you respond to Honorable Muhanga's question. Moses Kaziba said to you in an SMS, some are human wrongs defenders, and probably says you fall into that. Well, as you answer Honorable Muhanga's question.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Muhanga. I think the answer to your question is that if you try to take arms against the government, that's a declaration of war. You get it? And therefore, the full force of the state, you feel it. Two, in terms of rioters, there are certain actions that you can do that can qualify to be a declaration of war. If you decide to block a national road, you decide to interfere with the convoy of His Excellency the President, or you decide to that's a declaration of war, and all action shall be used against you. These are different issues when we talk about journalists being battered by the military police. So to answer your question, yes, the full force of the state shall be felt by anyone who tries to, and we have no regrets about when the state does that. Now, in terms of human, what did you call it? Human wrongs, defenders of human wrongs. Well, I don't know what human wrongs are, because in the discourse of human rights, we don't have what we call human wrong. What I need to tell that author is that Mr. Moses, while I appreciate his comment, is that human rights go with responsibilities, and human rights are not absolute.
As you enjoy your rights, you need to respect the rights of others.
And then there are certain rights that are absolute, and under no circumstance can you restrict upon. One, torture, degrading human treatment. You can never subject anyone to torture under our laws. It's a non-derogable right. Two, the right to habeas corpus. Three, the right to a fair trial. Last but not least, freedom from slavery or forced labor. Those are the only four non-derogable rights under Article 44 of our Constitution. But the rest of the other rights can be restricted upon them. But even when you are to restrict these rights, there are certain principles that you must follow that should be seen as justifiable and necessary. Don't just wake up and say, Honorable Margaret Mwanga, you're not going to leave your house. Why? Your freedom has been curtailed. There must be reasons why you're restricting her freedom of movement.
In a yes or no response,
yes,
are you saying that for those particular ones that have had themselves, locked up at their homes, there's not been any reason given, in your view as a human rights defender?
Well, you treat each case on its merit. I wouldn't know really, because you can hear that people are picked from different places. So it will be depending. But what we need to say is the due process of the law. That when you arrest someone, you inform him or why are you arresting him. Two, you caution the person that anything that you will be saying here at the time of arrest can be used against you. Three, you let the next of kin know that I'm taking Eddie, and this way I'm taking him for reasons ABC. And you let Eddie's lawyer get to also know That it has been taken. That is all we are saying. Due process of the law.
Due process, he said.
Not picking Eddie and his wife down away. He says that they just came and picked him in a van and she makes noise and then we keep quiet and say we have peace. You have peace, but Eddie's wife and children don't have peace. This is what I'm saying. And the absence of war doesn't necessarily mean that you're peaceful. No. Even in this pandemic, you can't think that the person who is in Mulago, they are dying for oxygen is peaceful. No. You have to look at peace is how you resolve conflict without using violence and how you see how to improve the welfare of your people. That defines peace.
Honorable Peter Ogwang, Madam, rather, Honorable Muhanga Margaret, I did, pass a question to you, and I'm sure you're ready to take it on.
Yeah,
but as well, perhaps you could retract on one or two entities that our brother Chirenga has just highlighted.
I have, first of all, I want to begin by thanking my sister, colleague, Honorable Muhanga, for the wonderful question. It is true. At the ministry, we interact with the journalists. To begin with, we have Uganda Journalism Association, which you know, Honorable Muhanga, very well, despite their own challenges, which I think you also know, and maybe that is the issue.
And I'm still a member.
Which might be one of those, as a professional
journalist. She says she's a member, but I think she's defaulted subscription for a while.
There are issues.
I pay whenever they come to me.
There are issues, of course. You know, being journalist, she knows very well because she's one by profession. There are issues where they have had a bit of challenges on agreeing on how they should be governed. Number two, of course, we have also, in one or the other, had an interface with the Uganda Professionalism, the Uganda Parliamentary Press Association, which, of course, seems to be beginning to assume they are bigger than the other Uganda Journalism Association. Number three, we work closely with, as I said it earlier on, that the Uganda Media Council is within the ministry. So issues of this kind of what has happened today is entirely one issue which Uganda Media Council follows it up. However, we're also coming up with the proposals on the amendment of the Press and Journalism Act, because there are areas where we feel we need to move on, and the complaints have come from Uganda Journalism Association. The other area, of course, you all know, Honorable Muhanga, that profession needs to be protected, in my opinion, and I'm happy you're here, and you need to mobilize many others. It's the only profession without, because in the law, in the act, we have a provision of Uganda Journalism School, Institute of Journalism, which Institute of Journalism would be like a law development center, which helps us to really give a thorough definition on an output of who a journalist is meant to be, complete with even having an accredited pass card to allow you to do work. Unfortunately, the challenges today which these journalists are facing, talk about low pay, is all coming out because your profession, even a DJ who has never been to class, is also now carrying a tag here, I'm a journalist. But in actual sense, is he one? No. So for us at the ministry, we are working closely with your leadership to see how do we begin to look at amendments of the Press and Journalism Act. Number two, how do we operationalize the Institute of Journalism in Uganda so that we can be able to have all journalists licensed and accredited to carry out day-to-day work. Number three, how do we work with of course, we're also working with the regulator, that's Uganda Communications Commission, for purposes of, if any media house wants to open up, be it an FM station, be it a television, we need the employment of a journalist. But what's happening today, Ogwang opens up an FM station, Ogwang picks up a son, a daughter, who maybe is an accountant by profession, a social worker, you go and be the one to do work, which entirely makes our journalists be, first of all, get issues in terms of pay. That's why you see question of pay is not really well within the journalism profession. So our view as a ministry, we are working with those journalism groups which are working within the country. So for me, I don't have a question. I really want to thank so much the human rights defender.
Yes, Honorable, probably as we close it off, the 48-hour ultimatum, someone has just sent a message asking me to ask you, does it still stand? A person being presented before courts of law, not beyond 48 hours of arrest.
First of all, there is a provision of the law which is acceptable by our national standards. Am I correct as far as the human rights defender is concerned? But also there are circumstances under which most times security tend to delay producing such persons before the courts of law.
Okay.
And for me, those circumstances must be able to we look at what happened, what is the problem, what is the magnitude. For instance, a terrorist, he comes in, he has been arrested, he refuses to speak. The law says he must be produced in court within what? 48 hours. Yes, by law he's meant to be produced. But as far as security is concerned, they might want to hold him beyond the 48 hours for purpose of, first of all, knowing who is this person, where is he from, who are his relatives. The background check must be given. Okay, can we also have access? Can his lawyer be called? Or does he have anyone who is going to come and stand for him as a lawyer? Some of those things are there, and also operational issues. So I want to say this year that by law it's 48 hours. But let's also acknowledge that there are other circumstances which mandate sometimes which make it go
by beyond. Other circumstances, it can be beyond 48 hours.
It can be beyond 48 hours.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. Thank you so much, Honorable MP. Thank you so much, I should say, Honorable ED, for the presence on the show. And I'm really grateful that all the guests in studio this time round have managed to keep their masks on to the last minute of play. We definitely thank you for being a part of this episode, the 30th edition of UBC Behind the Headlines. And of course, you could still follow the conversation on social media with the hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines, trending on Facebook, on Twitter, as well as on YouTube. Remember, our YouTube channel is UBC Television Uganda. We do thank the team that has made it possible for us to have this show come to this particular time. That is the team in the sound department, the team in the lighting department, the team in the camera department, technical, engineering, management, and each and every one of you. Thank you so very much for the bit that you have played in as far as making this particular show a success. We apologize for Ramadan Gobi's absence. I'm told he ran out on data. And he was thinking probably Honorable Ogwang had still curtailed internet access to Ugandans. So anyway, we shall be having him the next time round by the will of God. Thank you all for listening in. Thank you all for watching us. UBC Inspiring Uganda, UBC Behind the Headlines.
Welcome to English in a Minute. This expression sounds like a guessing game about food.
Jonathan, I can't find anyone to watch my cat while I'm away. And I have asked everyone.
You haven't asked me. What am I? Chopped liver?
Jonathan, The last time you watched my cat, you put her in a cat prison.
It was a pet spa.
We use this expression when we feel upset at being overlooked or ignored. It's another way of saying, what about me? In parts of America, chopped liver is traditionally served as a side dish and not the main course. So it's a food that is more easily forgotten. And that's English in a minute. Welcome to English in a minute. Every language has weather-related expressions. Two common weather conditions are rainy and sunny.
Jonathan, are you coming to my lawn care party? We need to mow the lawn, pull the weeds, and cut down a dead tree.
Of course, I will be there.
You know, you also said you were coming to my paint my kitchen party, and you didn't.
This time I will. Come rain or shine, I will be at your place Saturday morning.
Come rain or shine means something will happen no matter what. It's a promise. You can even use the phrase when talking about the actual weather. So if you invite people to an outdoor party, you can tell them it will happen come rain or shine. And that's English in a minute. Welcome to English in a minute. With some idioms, it is easy to guess their meaning.
First of all, you never include me in your plans. You are never there for me when I need you. We sleep in separate bedrooms. I'm leaving you.
What?
I'm leaving you. I'm getting out of this house. I'm getting out of this marriage. First of all, you never include me in your plans. You are never there for me when I need you. We sleep in separate bedrooms. We are never seen together anywhere. Are you ashamed of me?
My people suffer for lack of knowledge, says the Lord
free
God.
speech and free creation. The current government is, they call themselves the most progressive government in the history of Spain. No? So for them, the case of Pablo Hasél is a big problem because it's a clear sign that this is not true. No? This is one of the reasons why we want the independence, no? Because we want to build a new country with a more open and free laws. We want a more open system, no? A system which accept the culture and creation like the one of Pablo Hasél or others like Valtonyc. No? So of course we need this change. So we are fighting for this, for a more free country.
The alleged unsavory business practices of some of the world's biggest chocolate producers have been placed in the spotlight. International rights advocates have filed a lawsuit claiming that snack giants including Nestle, Mars, Cargill use children as young as 11 to make their products. Ilya Petrenko has been looking into the not-so-sweet story behind your favorite treat.
When chocolate cannot get more dark. I'm not talking about the percentage of milk, but rather how much child labor is used in production. Human rights activists are suing a number of food giants on the U.S. market, including the likes of Mars. The reason? claims of knowingly benefiting from selling cheap cocoa harvested by child slaves.
These companies are working together through the World Cocoa Federation. These companies are profiting handsomely from the very cheap cocoa that they get from using child slaves. Children who were kidnapped from Mali and brought to Cote d'Ivoire and forced to work. They came to Cote d'Ivoire between the ages of 11 and 14, and each of them ended up working for several years before they managed to escape.
So, the activists are sounding the alarm over Ivory Coast. A fact to think of, the country exports more cocoa than anyone else on the planet, now providing about 2/3 of the world's supply, which makes it very likely that the regular chocolate bar you eat tastes of illegal child labor. While you're chewing, just picture what slavery's like. Here's what the activists heard from kids who escaped after years of misery.
Yusuf Koulibaly was told he would be fed and paid his wages at the end of the season. He cleared brush with a machete, applied pesticides and herbicides without any safety instructions or protective gear. He slept on the plantation alone under a ragged tarp. He was exposed to insects and snakes. He was given very little food and was often hungry. At the end of the year, he was not paid.
Repeated stories of disastrous safety, food, work, and living conditions, all to end up being fooled with pay.
Hussein Kouattara and Issouf Bagayoko walked about 6 to 7 hours to the small isolated village of Saradouga. They were not given any food and they were only able to drink water out of a river. They did everything on the plantation without any protective gear. Both have visible scars from machete accidents.
An American government study found the number of children harvesting cocoa in West Africa has gone up year on year and is now about 1.6 million. More than 95% are engaged in hazardous work. Companies in the big chocolate business admit there's an issue with child labor and pretty much all claim they're doing their best to tackle it. But in their defense, they're trying to tell the critics how hard it is to monitor such a massive industry. Some businesses have built schools in Africa. Many have come up with programs to avoid child abuse. The activists, however, claim the programs could actually be used as schemes to create a positive image but hide the scale of slavery horrors.
Good press, and they roll out these fake programs that sound good on paper, the Cocoa Action Plan, the Nestle Cocoa Plan, and it's all just a lie. What they're actually doing is continuing to change nothing, except they create a small model program that monitors a tiny fraction of their supply chain so they can convince some consumers at least that they're making progress.
According to the lawsuit, only 30% of the plantations are subject to scrutiny. The rest are the so-called free zones, where there's claimed to be zero monitoring. So even if the food giants' efforts are indeed aimed at the right thing, the reality of the cocoa business is darker than the darkest chocolate bar you've ever tasted.
Ilya Petrenko taking us through that. Now, Nestle, Mars and Cargill are yet to respond to our request for comment on the allegations. Okay, let's bring you to the U.S. state of Texas now, where close to 3 million households remain without electricity. The power outages in the Lone Star State has seen production grind to a halt in some high-tech plants. Meanwhile, ordinary Texans are left to their own devices as temperatures in their homes drop severely, with roofs caving in on some houses under the weight of the snow.
So this is my house. I don't know what to do. Everything's flooding.
Some Texans left without power overnight reportedly put up tents inside their homes in a bid to keep warm. In recent days, temperatures have dropped to -18 degrees Celsius. That is the coldest levels seen there in more than 30 years. On Sunday, President Biden was forced to declare a state of emergency in the state, and the mayor of Colorado City was forced to resign after telling locals in a Facebook post to, quote, sink or swim and not wait for a handout. It's all happening there. The snowstorm has also intensified the debate over renewable energy, as many wind turbines froze to a halt while solar panels were covered with ice. Okay, let's bring you to Europe, where a court in The Hague has ruled that the Dutch government's controversial COVID curfew is illegal. It said that authorities have misused emergency powers. The curfew will, however, remain in place until the government's appeal on Friday. Our Europe correspondent Peter Oliver has more.
Well, this 9 p.m. curfew that's been in place in the Netherlands to try and stop the spread of COVID-19 has been one of the most controversial measures that's been put in across the European continent. On Tuesday, a court in The Hague, though, said it was illegal.
The curfew is a far-reaching violation of the right to freedom of movement and privacy, and indirectly limits, among other things, the right to freedom of assembly and demonstration. The curfew is based on a law for emergency situations where there's no time for debate with Parliament. There was no such pressing need in this case.
No such pressing need seems to be one of the key phrases in the ruling. It relates directly to the fact that the number of COVID cases in the Netherlands has been declining steadily since mid-December. We did see demonstrations against this curfew, demonstrations that turned violent, clashes between protesters and police, bordering on full-blown riot in cities like Amsterdam and Rotterdam earlier this year. But despite the court ruling on Tuesday, that curfew remains in place. The reason for that is Mark Rutte, the Dutch Prime Minister, and his government. They applied for an emergency injunction against the court ruling to allow the curfew to remain in place so it could be debated further. That injunction was granted. Mark Rutte says the curfew is necessary to get COVID numbers down and keep them down.
De avondklok is een middel.
The curfew is a means, not a goal. I can't emphasize that often enough. The aim is to bring the virus under control so we can regain all our freedoms. That's the reason the curfew was introduced, and that's not changed.
Well, Mr. Rutte's government are working on ways to put in place new laws that would essentially allow the curfew to be rendered legal. What we are seeing, though, when it comes to people on the streets in the Netherlands is there's a fairly mixed opinion right now to whether this curfew needs to be gotten rid of or whether it needs to stay.
That curfew makes absolutely no sense, what they've done now. They try to keep those students in, but if those students go somewhere before 9 p.m. and only go out again in the morning, that's fine too. The curfew, it was no use. They have to ground those planes so that people can't travel, because as long as people continue to travel, they will continue to travel.
I notice that people who don't have much to do with it have less trouble with corona. I've had corona myself, so I know how bad it can be. My mother died of it recently. We also noticed that there are fewer flu symptoms, fewer cold complaints, also because people have less contact and stick to the rules in a better manner. I think the responsibility should lie with every individual.
I didn't like the curfew myself, but I didn't think they had to protest against it either. It doesn't bother me personally because I'm not coming out of work after 9 p.m. anyway. But I mean, it matters for people like my brother who come back from work after 9.
While this is all very messy legally, it may well have huge repercussions for the more than 15,000 people who've already been handed fines for breaching the curfew by the police. We are expecting more to come on this. It's up for debate on Friday in the Netherlands. We'll see whether that curfew remains, whether it goes, or whether it comes back in some different type of form.
And just to stay with Peter's report, a sociologist we spoke to believes the standoff between the government and the court is a result of deeper issues.
I think it is a serious political crisis, but it's a political crisis that started many months ago when the government was forced to resign after the so-called child benefit scandal. When the curfew measures were announced back in January, we had some of the worst riots we have seen in the Netherlands for many years. That was not riots exactly for the curfew as such. There were riots against a government that for many, many decades is dismantling much of the healthcare infrastructures in the country. And now that we have an emergency, a pandemic, the government basically doesn't have an effective enough healthcare system to cope with the situation, and they're not even able to vaccinate fast enough the population. So altogether, I think that the court is echoing a lot of the disappointment of many people with the government, and this doesn't have to do only with the curfew. There is generally a government that has followed policies that had impact on large parts of the population, negative impact.
Israelis refusing to get a coronavirus jab may soon find their names on a government watch list. It's what the country's Prime Minister has suggested, raising concerns over possible privacy violations and discrimination. Israel has a world-leading vaccination program, but a recent loss of momentum has worried Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The state is now considering rolling out a series of measures to boost uptake among the population. They include launching a campaign against disinformation, introducing new legislation, and giving immunity passports to the inoculated.
The reason to go and get vaccinated is that we are now launching the Green Passport Plan. Whoever has been vaccinated will be able to go and enjoy the theatre, the cinema, sports events, flights abroad, restaurants and more.
Well, talk of the new measures, if they're put in place, spark protests outside the PM's residence in Jerusalem, with hundreds demanding Netanyahu's resignation, accusing him of mishandling the pandemic and also of corruption. The proposal to share the names of unvaccinated people with authorities has raised concerns over privacy violations and possible discrimination. Here's what Israelis think.
The government should convince the people, but not enforce them to do that.
This matter, you have to be very vigilant for the privacy of the citizens, but over public health, all measures should be taken.
Of course, you can't force someone to be vaccinated, but you can forbid him to enter into closed places, closed areas where he can infect other people.
It's okay to do it to protect the safety and health of all the people around. It's violating one right to protect all the other people.
Israeli authorities are using the carrot as well as the stick to encourage people to get vaccinated. A food truck outside a vaccine centre in Tel Aviv has been giving out free pastries to make the experience of getting inoculated more palatable. This is RT International. Coming up, support for a third political force in the US reaches an all-time high. We ask experts if that's the answer to current American political tensions. That story and more after the break.
Kyazze's Financial Survival Guide. I don't buy eggs. I buy omelet features. Hey, that's not an omelet, that's a fried egg. That's the last time I buy eggs from the future. Don't crack up. Watch Kyazze Report.
Is your media a reflection of reality? In a world transformed, what will make you feel safer? Isolation or community? Are you going the right way, or are you being led somewhere? Which direction? What is truth? What is fake? In a world corrupted, you need to descend. So join us in the depths, or remain in the shallows.
"22 minutes into the program, welcome back. A wide-ranging new poll has shown that support for a third major American political party has reached an all-time high. According to the study, around 2/3 of Americans now support the idea. That is the most since the question first started being asked by the Gallup polling group 18 years ago. Within the big parties themselves, 46% of Democrats say a third way is needed. That's down from 52% in September. But a record high of Republicans favour the creation of another party. Trump supporters, however, are still urging him to unite the ranks.
And I said, Mr. President, this MAGA movement needs to continue. We need to unite the party. Trump plus is the way back in 2022.
Earlier, I discussed the current state of U.S. political parties with a number of guests.
I think that in the Republican Party, you have two factions. You have a conservative pro-Trump faction, and then you have the establishment side. The establishment side has really not been favorable to conservatives who see what's going on right now legislatively in America tantamount to basically having a uniparty. You basically have two progressive parties that are for big government, they're for reckless spending and growing the size of government, and all of these things that conservatives and libertarians have traditionally been against. So I think that with President Trump's basically his expulsion, if you want to call it that, from the mainstream GOP.
The system is rigged against libertarians and Green Party and others. The Democratic and Republican Party do collude. They do share the same philosophy. They're both part of the same welfare state. They share the same view toward power. The real problem is that the government, that politics has playing too big of a role in the lives of Americans. It's become our national sport.
Democrats often, the Green New Deal, that's a Green Party policy. Universal health care, those are Green Party policies. Free college tuition, those are Green Party policies, but they get co-opted by the Democrats. But the Democrats really can't implement those policies because their allegiance to their donor base. And that's the problem with both parties.
Whether or not a third party is actually good for their cause is debatable because generally third parties are seen mostly as a spoiler in America.
Building a movement of people who are non-partisan, who are beyond partisan, who are transpartisan, is the best way to break up the monopoly that's held and shared by the Republicans and Democrats, who are completely corrupt.
State parties, governor races, even here locally, city council, mayor races. So we're going to start from the bottom up. We also have some lobbying that we have to do, and I know third parties don't want to do that, but there's legislation that needs to be changed to make it make U.S. elections more fair for everybody and give voters more choices at their ballot box.
Well, the former U.S. president might have been acquitted, but his supporters may not be off the hook. That's after Democrats announced plans for a 9/11-style commission to investigate the Capitol riots. RT's Donald Corder asks if a McCarthy-era witch hunt is on the horizon.
Repression 101. You gotta know how to tell friend from foe. Back in the McCarthy era, when people accused of being a communist were being arrested left and right, Cold War conservatives had a system for how to find a red under the bed.
If a person defends the activities of communist nations while consistently attacking the domestic and foreign policy of the United States, she may be a communist.
Now it seems the descendants of those hunters have become the hunted. The Democrats may have failed to impeach Donald Trump for a second time, but they're far from giving up their crusade against the former president and anyone who dares to support him.
Our next step will be to establish an outside, independent 9/11 type commission to investigate and report on the facts and causes relating to the January 6, 2021 domestic terrorist attack upon the United States Capitol complex.
A 9/11 type commission? What does that mean? The same torture program and arbitrary detentions that Washington deployed in response to that terrible attack? It's still not clear, but some Democrats are suggesting that a commission is just not enough.
And they're going to need, I believe, at the Department of Justice, a white nationalism task force to make sure that they are understanding at the earliest of ages how people are being radicalized.
Because after all, the Democrats see no difference between the people who stormed the Capitol building and members of Al-Qaeda or the Islamic State.
The threat of domestic terrorism preceded that terrible day.
The biggest terror threat in this country comes from radicals on the far right, primarily white men.
Threats of violence from homegrown extremists are growing in the wake of the insurrectionist attack on the Capitol.
Sound familiar?
When a great democracy is destroyed, it will not be from enemies from without, but rather because of enemies from within.
The Democrats are saying this is only the beginning.
This impeachment trial was just the start of holding Donald Trump accountable, but that we need to make sure that we're doing accountability of anyone who incited, encouraged, or committed acts of violence.
We haven't even gotten into the thick of it, and already some conservatives feel that they are in danger.
Moved my children to a secreted location. We have hired armed guards to protect our places.
With a Democrat-controlled government dead set on bulldozing its opposition, many are having a hard time imagining a future that doesn't resemble the political paranoia of 1950s America.
I think we're coming out of a very divisive time where the President of the United States stoked a lot of those flames. Liberals and conservatives took up those banners in their own ways, and now we have to see how the dust settles. And if the dust settles in squelching speech, I think we really need to be greatly concerned that we're not overreacting in an emotional knee-jerk react that silences people simply because we don't like what they have to say. I think both on the right and the left, there's concern about, can I really express how I feel about things? Can I put things in my email signatures? Is there going to be pushback from my employer? I think that we have to be concerned as we're moving forward how we're really going to be reacting to this, and if dragging us through the January event one more time through an ideological battle rather than the facts of what happened that day is, if that's going to help us or not, I don't know.
A reminder, for up-to-the-minute developments, our Twitter page has you covered. Just 2 letters, R and T. We'll find it for you. I'm Ewan O'Neill, and this is RT International.
Join me every Thursday on The Alex Salmond Show, when I'll be speaking to guests on the world of politics, sport, business, and show business. I'll see you then.
It's the nature of human beings to change nature, so I think the inevitability of death, I think, is one of those last barriers, and it does kind of make people uneasy. But really, why should we be forced to die at the time just because nature decides I'm going to flip out your heart valve or pop something in your brain? Why don't we get to choose that?
Hello. I'm going to be the next school shooter of 2018. My goal is at least 20 people with an AR-15 and a couple tracer rounds. I think I can get it done. Location is Stone Douglas in Parkland, Florida. Alright, here's the plan. I'm going to go take an Uber in the afternoon before 2:40. From there, I'll go into the school campus, walk up the stairs, load my bags, and get my AR and shoot people down at the main courtyard.
Yeah, breathe. You touch your window.
We're good. Everyone on the floor. We're good. Everyone on the floor. On the floor.
In this classroom, screams of anguish as police lead students to safety.
Come on,
there is an active shooter working at Douglas. Multiple gunshots are being fired. We can hear them in the background. Our 911
It began as an ordinary school day, and it was almost over when gunfire erupted this afternoon.
17 people killed in a mass shooting at a Florida high school.
One of the deadliest mass shootings in American history.
She was sending us texts like saying, I love you, I'm sorry, and all that because she didn't think she was going to make it.
President Trump, you say, what can you do? You can stop the guns from getting into these children's hands.
A teacher would have a concealed gun on them. They'd go for special training, and you would no longer have a gun-free zone.
To the revolution. It is a powerful and peaceful one because it is of, by, and for the young people of this country. Since this movement began, people have asked me, do you think any change is going to come from this? Look around. We are the change. My generation, having spent our entire lives seeing mass shooting after mass shooting, has learned that our voices are powerful and our votes matter.
Arming teachers doesn't make the situation better. We know that adding more guns to a situation doesn't save any lives. The good man with a gun is a myth. More people died in the first half of this year than died in the landing at D-Day. More Americans died in the first half of this year. That's insane. That's crazy. And people just don't realize it because they don't see it in the same way that we see a war. It doesn't impact them the same way.
Good afternoon, family. Yes, I said family. Our pain makes us family. Us hurting together brings us closer together to fight for something better. My name is Alex King. I'm 17. I am a senior at North Lundale College Prep. As well as a peace warrior and a leader with Good Kids Mad City. Chicago has been at the forefront of gun violence for a very long time, with 650 people being murdered in the year of 2017 and 771 being murdered in the year of 2016. But that's not it. Gun violence travels in places like Florida, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles. It happens nationwide. I know many people who have lost loved ones, friends and family on a regular basis due to gun violence.
Nah, it's gonna take me a little longer. We gotta go around. Somebody got shot up here by Skips. Yeah, they got it blocked off. You can't get through. I'm about to try to come around Walcott or something. I don't know. I'm about to see if we can get around. Good Kids Mad City was created last year, so in the spark of what happened in Parkland, Florida. After the shooting happened, gun violence then became like this national emergency that everyone cared about. And so the young people were like, this is going to be bad for us, because historically, whenever these mass shootings happen in these white schools, they get the attention, they get money, they get trauma services, they get grievance counselors, and we're going to get more gun laws, and we're going to get more police in our schools than our communities, like we're the ones doing this thing. And we've been fighting for against gun violence for years, and we're not getting any attention. So their thing was, we want to make sure that since now this is important to everybody, we want to make sure we're not left out of the conversation. And a lot of organizing is youth-led, is led by young people leading the way, because they're the ones fighting for the next generation.
In 2018, when the Parkland shooting happened, I decided that I needed to go out and actually take some action. So at that point, I took some friends together and organized a statewide march against the NRA and against a local organization in Colorado, my home state. In actuality, that's just not true, and really having as many as we do just puts more people at danger. Good, well, thanks. How's yours? There's a real culture around guns and gun ownership. Americans, look back on this very rosy-eyed image from the 1700s when we rose up against our oppressors and, threw off the colonial control of Great Britain with our, musket men and our regular people, everyday people who all came together and fought back. It's this very idealized image of, this older America, and that feeling pervades today, where we feel like if we can personally own firearms, if the Second Amendment allows us to personally, each of us, own a firearm, then it's going to somehow protect us from governments taking over control, somehow make us stronger and safer. And it makes Americans, look past the deaths that happen every single day, the 100 people who die, the 200 who are injured every day, and say, it's fine. We need to be able to own these because we need to be able to say that we're somehow safe from our government.
Can we just hold this? So I'm going to educate you for a hot sec.
But does anyone have any questions about the bills that we're going to be talking about today? If you see on the right side of your folder, you'll see there are two one-pagers, one on extreme risk law and the other on the CDC funding.
After I finished organizing the event in Colorado and leading all of those students in Colorado, I moved to DC to start college. And when I came here, there was no March for Our Lives presence. There was no organizational presence. And so with a couple of friends, I got together and we founded the first March for Our Lives chapter here in DC. We set up the infrastructure.
Like every year, the government spends so much money on so many things. Like it's about sitting there and figuring it out. It's about deciding what's a priority when 40,000 people are being killed every
regulate by something, and we can't come to a bipartisan consensus on what is going to help solve that. And we've seen the CDC has done comparable effective research that's then been able to save lives.
Is your media a reflection of reality? In a world transformed, what will make you feel safer? Isolation or community? Are you going the right way or are you being led somewhere? Which direction? What is truth? What is fake? In a world corrupted, you need to descend. So join us in the depths, or remain in the shallows.
Да, здесь деревья не растут, яблоки не растут. Это наша жизнь, чтобы ходить на охоту. Как подъезжаешь, они начинают сразу, бить хвостом. Бывало, что и переворачивал лодки.
Мы не говорим, что мы убиваем, мы говорим, мы берем. Или природа нам дала. Дарвин сказал, что человек произошел от обезьяны, а мы чукчи от кита.
We're more politicized than ever. We're more polarized than ever.
The 21st century, when speed is measured in megabytes per second.
Интернет, он, с одной стороны, легко объединим, но точно так же легко разъединим.
Electronic mail, electronic money, electronic media. Infinite possibilities for exchanging information.
Они имеют бесконечную, безграничную власть.
Freedom of speech and social media bans. Censorship and double standards. Who should judge what can be said online?
Мы не совсем понимаем алгоритмы, которые работают по модерации контента.
The internet audience now totals almost 4.5 billion. Almost all of them are active social network users. But one wrong move and their page is deleted.
Digital annihilation. You don't exist anymore. Poof. Gone.
Who runs the show on the web? How can anyone stand up to the tech giants if even heads of state face the threat of being banned? Is there any limit to all that virtual power?
Я за то, чтобы правила жизни в офлайне трансформировались в правила жизни в онлайне.
It's real dangerous for kids my age. Bullets don't have a name on it, and there's different gang battles and wars going on. It's a war zone. And people would get revenge at the little kids just to get even with the older guys and things of that such. And people would use the little kids just to get even with the older guys. So it's like, no matter what age you is, you're being targeted. They coming at you, and it's a shame. It's sad. I have plenty of friends that lost their life. I keep this right here. I lost a friend that played basketball, so I keep this like as motivation. I always keep it right here, just right here. Del Monte, I keep him right there, just to like these type of things keep me motivated and give me that passion to remember what am I doing and who I'm doing it for and the reason why I'm doing it. Like when we lost Del Monte, it wasn't a reason for us to hang our heads or be defeated and things like that. It just gave us that fire that we need and the passion. That's why when y'all ask me like, why do I keep the heart right here, the broken heart, is because everybody go through heartbreaks and things of that such, and I don't let my heartbreaks break me. I wear my heartbreaks now. I wear it and I strengthen it now, and it's something that I look at and I overcome it now.
Last night, 19-year-old Domonte Johnson was just outside his brother's basketball practice near Euclid and 86th Street when CPD says someone inside a tan-colored vehicle fatally shot him in the chest and stomach.
It's not fair that so many black and brown kids have to worry about being shot on their way to school or on their way home from school.
I just want peace. Heal the land. We losing too many of our babies. Every time you turn around, mamas is crying. Mamas is crying for their babies.
Johnson's family says he was putting together a fundraiser to help children go to Christian camp and worked with advocacy group Good Kids Mad City, helping to stop the violence that killed him.
Good Kids Mad City was created to keep the urban narrative alive. They're talking about violence and lack of what do we need for us to be able to thrive and grow. There's no one solution to the issue. So just trying to create new laws isn't gonna stop us from feeling what we're going against when it comes to violence. At Sherwood, but we're doing the training at on 83rd and Damon. So actually we got about maybe 25 kids that'll be there. All right. So we're gonna do the icebreaker. You hear me clap once, you hear me clap twice. You hear me say shh.
Come on, guys, let's go join the rest of the team.
My name is Carlil Pittman. I'm the co-founder of Good Kids Mad City. Inglewood, born and raised, Chicago all my life. The purpose of what we're doing here today is basically in the climate of the neighborhoods that we come from, we experience a lot of violence, a lot of shootings happening. Sometimes, unfortunately, young people are around to see those things, or young people are the victims of those things happening. And so what we took leisure of doing is educating ourselves and educating our community, because a lot of times we are the first responders. They say ambulance are the first responders, but a lot of times a friend or a family member or a brother or sister is there when something tragic happens. And what do you do in that situation?
So my first question is, how long do you think an ambulance could take to get to the scene? Go ahead, DJ.
45 minutes to an hour.
Can you speak up?
45 minutes to an hour.
Anybody else got an answer?
15 to 30 minutes.
Okay. So the estimated arrival time is 25 to 30 minutes. Do everybody know how much blood is in a human body? Josh?
4.5.
Okay. So it's about 4.5 liters, which is about, if you want to see it visually, that's 2 pops, 2 liter pops. So how long do you think it takes for us to bleed out? Go ahead.
45 minutes.
Okay. Anybody else have an answer for me? Some ladies in the back. Y'all can guess. It can be wrong. It's okay.
2 minutes.
Okay. Anybody else? You got an answer? All right, so on the average, it takes a person about 7 minutes to bleed out. Depending on where they got hit or what artery was hit, it could take 1 minute. So if it takes the ambulance 25 to 30 minutes in predominantly black and brown communities, and it takes a human being 7 minutes to bleed out, by the time they get there, they already bled out to death. So that's why this training is important, because in situations like that, we need our people that are around us to be able to help somebody and save somebody's life. It's not guaranteed that you can save that person's life, but for you doing something, for you trying, you definitely can. I've lost a lot of people in my life, and honestly, if I would have knew this training a couple years ago, I probably could have saved somebody's life, because I've seen a lot of people get killed in front of me. Like Carlil said, as soon as that person is hit, the clock is ticking. They're already bleeding. So back to that person, if you had to perform CPR. All right, so when you're on your wrist, there's 2 sides. You could look underneath your pinky. You can look underneath your thumb. If it's underneath your neck, it's underneath your chin bone. And if you move down, you can see like down your throat, you'll feel it underneath there a little lower. It'll be behind your knee. You can check it, so there's different places, because sometimes the wrist is a hard, tricky spot to find the pulse. After you find the pulse, you want to start performing the compressions. Just recently had a death, April 15th. My brother Edward passed away. He was shot in front of his house. Bullets don't have names, and we can't pick and choose, you know, we just gotta learn how to deal with the situation. And I know a lot of people still like it will get better, it will get easier, and it really doesn't. You learn how to deal with the situation better each and every day. The people that I've lost to gun violence, I probably can count on both my hands and more. So it would be a lot for me to name people. I've lost people from various ages, as up to like 7 to like 35, you know. I've lost people back to back in the same year. And it's something nowadays, like I just expect to lose somebody. And I just, you know, I try to keep my head up, you know, and just hope for the best. But it's kind of just now becoming normal.
Okay. Is he unconscious? How do you know he unconscious?
I just said, I can hear him. He got pulse.
Pause. So he unconscious. He does have a pulse. And the next thing you do is start pumping.
Compress, 30 compressions. Because he's not unconscious, he don't have a pulse.
But it's blood all over this concrete.
Personally, I know it's not normal. Like, you know, the stuff that happens because it's not supposed to be. Like, when you hear gunshots, you're supposed to be scared. You're supposed to want to call the cops, you know. When someone dies, it's supposed to be very heartbreaking. But in where I'm from and where I grew up at, like, if you hear gunshots, the kids still play. Like, they still play outside. We still finish enjoying our time, you know, and it's because they just normalize it. Like, it happens so often that people use it as if, like, oh, I just got a scrape on the knee. Like, it was just nothing.
I heard there was this joke someone told one time. Well, they said that Chicago is the only place where a young person can be dodging bullets on their way to school and still get marked tardy and get a detention when they get to school for being late. And it was funny, but it was so serious. Like it wasn't like a haha funny. It was like a that's messed up because I believe it kind of thing. And they get to school and don't even talk about what happened on their way there. So I think that it's a skill. That coping mechanism is a skill. Understanding how these things are so serious and just being able to walk through every day like nothing happened. Like there's so much that someone can go through before they even make it to school in the morning.
We also, somebody could talk about the arming teachers stuff and ask him. Yep. We don't have a one page on it, but we do have the resolution.
Oh, and then I stole this cool graph from JP, so we can use that.
Gun violence affects every minority population, every vulnerable population in America, and because of that intersection and how much it affects so many different people and so many different groups of people, we've been able to build a really strong coalition and also reach out to all of those young people who recognize that one day they inevitably will become impacted by gun violence. Gun violence isn't just gun violence. Gun violence is systemic, issues, systemic racism, systemic, sexism. It's about, the populace. It's about voting rights. It's about, LGBTQ rights. It's about the right to walk down the street and walk to class and not have to be afraid of a stray bullet hitting you and killing you or your friend or your brother or whoever it is. It's about the right to have a future.
Hey, do you have a minute? You said you'd be going into the meeting at 2? Okay, I'll give you a text. Thanks, mate. See you later, man. Bye.
The fact that we're kids is our biggest strength and our biggest weakness. Definitely the fact that we are young people and that we do have such a strong moral compass and we feel things so fiercely and so quickly and we act on it and we're not afraid to speak up has always been